Sanje Chedang Suichi Chunam La Chenju Badu Dani Chab Suji Dagi Jinzo Jepe Sunam Ji Rula Pinche Sanje Drupa Sanje Chedang Suichi Chunam La Chenju Badu Dani Chasuji Dagi Jinzo Jepe Sonamji Rula Pinchi Sanje Drupajo Sanje Cheda Soichi Chonam La Chenju Badu Dani Chasuji Dagi Jinzo Jepe Sonamji Rula Pinchi Sanje Drupajo Paden Sawe Lama Rimboichi Dagi Chiwo Pemne Denshula Kalin Chimbo Gune Jizunde Kuzun Tuji Nudru Sauduzo Saje Puso Soshe Meta Tran Rabling Shinit Jimba de Sanje Shingdo Migdo Puai Rukamna Shinla Chupajo Sanje Nashe Samba Dan Loi Jita Jitao Chichun Tumun Tekbaye Chichi Kolo Kodo So, firstly I'd like to say good morning to everybody. And we begin now the third day of studying this text composed by Jamgon Kontro Lodro Thaye, explaining the Shentong Madhyamaka view and how we could actually meditate on that view. So we've covered a little bit of the text so far. We studied the history, the origins of this particular view in Lord Buddha's teaching, and how it was then subsequently transmitted in India. Whatsoever, physical or mental, lack any intrinsic nature or any essence, any solidity. So this is the very distinct teaching of the second turn of the wheel, and therefore of the common Madhyamaka, or the Rangtong system. So if we are, so to speak, we feel an affinity with that teaching, perhaps for karmic reasons, then we can use it as a stepping stone to Shentong. And this is what Kontrol Lodro Thaye will now explain to us, how that would work. So he says in the text, their system of those who assert essencelessness, or the common Madhyamaka, if you like, their system asserts that the true nature of all phenomena, from form through to omniscience, is like the horns of a rabbit or the child of a barren woman. Their reality is completely inconceivable, non-accomplished emptiness. So, what does that long sentence mean? Well, it is the philosophical opinion, view of the common Madhyamaka, that nothing goes beyond emptiness, whether you're talking in terms of the first skandha, form skandha, if you like, physical things, right through to the qualities of a Buddha, such as omniscience. All of them really, when you investigate them, you simply cannot find them to be truly existent. They are empty of any true existence, empty of ever having been in existence, empty of ever having been produced, or as the word is put here, accomplished. Accomplished means to be produced in this sense, in the first place. So we have this idea, we deluded beings have this idea there's true bodies and true other phenomena, but it's like asserting that a rabbit has horns. A rabbit has never had horns to begin with. It's not that you need to remove the horns from the rabbit, it simply doesn't have them in the first place. Or like the child of a barren woman, a woman who is infertile, it's not that she had a child and then lost it. It was never there in the first place. It's an impossibility to ever come into being. So from the Rangtong point of view, all conditioned phenomena, whether it's physical or mental, are like that. They are truly, when investigated, truly found to be not there at all. Empty of intrinsic nature, Rangtong, empty in themselves. As he says, their reality, meaning the reality of them, what they truly are, is completely inconceivable, non-accomplished emptiness. An emptiness that leaves nothing behind. We call this megak in Tibetan, non-affirming negation. You thought there was something there, but there was nothing there at all. Not like, for instance, the emptiness, if I poured the water out from here, I could say the cup is empty of water, but the cup itself still remains. That is emptiness of other, Rangtong. The cup remains, but it's empty of water. But the Rangtong view is that there's no cup either. There's simply nothing remaining at all. When one investigates the nature of phenomena, one doesn't find anything whatsoever with any true existence, with any intrinsic nature. So, he continues, the arising and unceasing appearance of these empty phenomena through dependent origination is definitively established by the 5 great reasonings of Madhyamaka. So, if one asks the question, if all phenomena are, as you say, truly without any intrinsic nature, why does anything manifest at all? Why are these appearances of a world, of sentient beings, of samsara, and so on and so forth? And the answer is that that manifestation of appearances is nothing other than emptiness, because the appearances manifest not created by themselves, not created by something other than themselves, not created by a combination of those, or not randomly, but simply through the coming together of causes and conditions. So whatever appears, physical or mental, is a dependently arising, a dependently originated appearance. And that is the same thing as saying it's empty, because when we say phenomena are empty, we are saying they're empty of any intrinsic nature. They don't have the existence, the type of existence we mistakenly project on them, because they're all manifesting simply through dependent origination, the gathering of causes and conditions, or from another angle, the gathering of parts which make up a whole. It's like the table is not intrinsic existence in itself, it's what manifests out of the agglomeration of different parts. Or finally, phenomena dependently originated simply because they only manifest in dependence on a mind that projects their appearance. These are the 3 ways in which phenomena are dependently originated, according to the common Madhyamaka. And as he says here, we can establish this through any one of the 5 great reasonings, or modes of analysis, types of analysis, taught in the Madhyamaka. So you can study those in other places, such as the great Madhyamaka treatises of Chandakirti and Shantideva and Nagarjuna, or in Mipam Rinpoche's Kenjuk, these 5 reasonings, reasoning from what is called the Vajra fragments type of analysis, reasoning from the point of view of how could truly existent phenomena ever originate, reasoning from the point of view of how can there be ever a truly existent effect, reasoning from the point of view of can you ever find one entity which could be then, when brought together, many entities. So in other words, refuting the idea of singularity and multiplicity. And finally, simply through dependent origination itself, that one can never assert the true existence of a phenomena without relation to other phenomena. It can never stand alone. So for instance, we have a notion that high means something, but it doesn't mean anything in itself, only in relation to low. We have a notion that coming means something, is meaningful, but no, it's not. It only has a meaning in dependence upon the idea of going, hot, cold, tall, short, inner, outer, man, woman. All these are dependently existing phenomena because they exist only through relation. So that is the 5th of the great reasonings taught in Madhyamaka, through which we can understand that all conditioned phenomena are indeed empty. So control, anyway, that is something you, as I say, you study in the extensive presentations of the Madhyamaka school of tenets. Control Odratai continues. It is just as the fire produced by rubbing 2 sticks together consumes the sticks and in turn disappears. Likewise, attached concepts are destroyed by the discriminating primordial wisdom through investigation with discriminative concepts. What does he mean? He means that what we're doing with this analysis is we are removing an erroneous belief in something that has never been there in the first place. So we, using the tool of emptiness, so to speak, to destroy clinging to things having substance. But it's not that we're trying to prove existence is a thing, as if we're simply saying everything is this one thing called emptiness, as if emptiness was a substance in itself, or a thing or a reality in itself. Emptiness is just a tool for removing this clinging to substantiality. So like when you produce a fire by rubbing together 2 sticks, once the fire has been generated, it consumes the sticks and then it consumes itself. There's no fire left. When the sticks have been removed, there's nothing there to generate fire. So both sticks and fire disappear. Similarly with this removing of the belief in true existence, that's all it is. So there's nothing for us to cling to at the end. It's not that we've said, we prove that, oh, people believe in some things, but we teach them to believe in a super thing called emptiness. As emptiness was like a universal reality or universal substance. It's not. It's like a medicine that removes a false belief, but then it dissolves itself. This is why Nagarjuna in Mula Madhyamaka Karika says, my view is that I don't have a view, meaning I use the teaching to remove a mistaken opinion, but I don't have a position to cling to at the end. Because if he had a position to cling to at the end, then he would have a basis for the disturbing emotions, a cause of the disturbing emotions to arise. So as I kind of described it earlier. It's like the Madhyamaka view is a therapy to remove wrong opinions. That is the purpose of it. So what are you doing? You're using concepts, the concepts which ask questions like, what do you mean by intrinsic nature? What would such a phenomenon be like if you could prove it, if you could find it? And then uses other tools, the questioning, to dismantle that false concept. So it's like you use concept to dismantle concept. But at the end, let go of the concepts. Because otherwise, you'll simply replace one attachment to the idea that things truly exist with another attachment, the idea that things truly don't exist. In other words, there'll still be something in front of your mind for you to cling to. But as Shantideva explains in chapter 9, Bodhisattva, when neither the idea of existence nor non-existence remains in front of the mind, then everything is pacified, meaning that is the way to nirvana. So this is the great skill of the common Madhyamaka, that it removes clingings to the idea of true existence and even clinging to the emptiness as if it were some kind of opposite to true existence. If there's nothing that has true existence, the idea there's such a thing as true non-existence is cancelled out, because it only makes sense if in relation to true existence. So, in this way, attached concepts are destroyed by the discriminating primordial wisdom through investigation with discriminative concepts. Primordial wisdom itself then remains in non-objectifiability. It's like this quote I just made from Shantideva. Your mind can't grasp at anything any longer because there's nothing in front of it. The opinion things exist has gone. The opinion things truly don't exist has gone. So it's non-objectifiability means like you don't have a focus. You don't have anything to attach the mind to. You see, actually, we're desperate to attach our mind to something. It makes us feel secure to do so. And that is why it's so, the teaching of emptiness is in a way dangerous. Like Saraha said, those who believe in true existence are fools. Those who believe in emptiness are like as stupid as cattle, meaning those who objectify emptiness make it something that you can hold on to and fix onto. And again, it's like you can cure people's clinging to true existence, but it is very difficult to cure their clinging to true non-existence, to emptiness. So if we overshoot, so to speak, in our analysis and end up proving emptiness as if it were a real thing, then we've got lost. We've veered from the proper middle way view. So, up to now, Jamgon Control has gone through the steps of, one might say, proper Rangtong. Well presented, clear, accurate Rangtong procedure. Now, at this point, Control Odutai says, if such followers, people who started with this affinity with the Madhyamaka, the common Madhyamaka teaching, if such followers then cultivate, without mental activity, the realization of non-self, using the method of non-meditation on the space-like nature, they will develop many doors of unified shamatha, calm abiding, and vipassana, insight, meditative concentration, such as the samadhi known as the precious lamp. So what he means is that at this point, when you've worked through your mistaken opinions that have up to now attributed to existence to phenomena, when you've, as it were, intellectually detoxed from your false beliefs, then you're ready to actually approach it through meditation. But already having dissolved your intellectual clinging to positions, then when you approach meditation, you don't fixate on anything. You don't have any, so to speak, agenda in your meditation. You don't direct your mind in any way whatsoever. So he calls this, the meditation, the method of non-meditation, without mental activity. That is the correct way to cultivate the realization of non-self, here standing as a synonym for emptiness. So, non-meditation means, if you like, no goal, no aim, no perspective, no idea I'm going to discover something or reach something. Because indeed there is nothing to reach. There's no position to arrive at. Any position you have with regard to ultimate reality is by virtue of being a position, an error, a mistake. Because what can be said about that which is beyond all concepts, all dualistic concepts, existence, non-existence, etc., etc. So the appropriate way to meditate for somebody who has understood this, at least intellectually, is by in a way giving up the idea of meditating, producing something. It doesn't. Just completely relax and let go. Your meditation should be, to use that term used here, yilamizepa, means without mental activity. It doesn't mean stupidity or blankness. It means, like I said, no agenda, no aim, no goal, no trying to do anything, no trying to remove thoughts, no trying to produce stillness between thoughts, no aim whatsoever. And if you can rest in that non-meditation meditation, so to speak, then naturally the qualities of shamatha and vipassana will arise. Generally, when we approach meditation, of course, we think first to cultivate shamatha through the 9 stages of settling the mind, and then when the mind reaches the level of even settling, then we can enter into the vipassana practice, investigating phenomena and mind. But here, we don't go through any stages or steps. If you can just rest in that space that is there, present for you, because you don't have any clinging to intellectual structures, intellectual frameworks about things, then the qualities of calm abiding, stillness, settledness, stability, and insight, clear seeing, directly seeing, without distortion, those qualities will just be present and manifest. So that is the way that somebody enters into meditation once they've got confidence in the Madhyamaka view. Then, Control says, at that point, if such followers who follow this procedure are subsequently properly introduced through the utterly pure transmissions and oral instructions, there will then arise from erroneous views and perspectives into discriminating wisdom and realize the view of the extraordinary, or if you like, the uncommon great Madhyamaka. Okay? So here's the, as it were, the point of entry into the Shentong view for such practitioners who've come through the common Madhyamaka, then through the meditation, which is non-meditation. Their mind is ready at that point, Control's telling us, to be introduced to the Shentong view. And that may seem not so important, but his stress on introduction, notro in Tibetan, this is a term we find usually employed only in Dzogchen and Mahamudra, where the Lama makes an introduction to the nature of your mind, either through words or presence or symbols. But Contro's deliberately using it here to say that in a way, Shentong view is something that is introduced to you. It's not something which is an object of reasoning and proof. All the philosophical tenets up to this point, are, as we saw with the mention of the 5 Madhyamaka reasonings. But the Buddha nature is not a subject of reasoning. It's not an object that can be accomplished through reasoning, because it's the natural state of our mind, primordially present, beyond all extremes. So you can't prove it or grasp it through reasoning. So it has to be introduced. Therefore, as with Mahamudra and Dzogchen, this disciple, himself or herself, has to be, in a way, ready for that introduction, because otherwise the introduction may be made, but the student cannot see what is being shown to them in this pointing out. So the followers at this point are subsequently properly introduced through the utterly pure transmissions and oral instructions. The utterly pure transmissions of the Shentong view. He will mention some of these utterly pure transmissions shortly, so I'll not go through them now, but he's referring to textual presentations of Shentong. And oral transmissions is obvious, means like some short pith instructions made by the master, again to introduce the Buddha nature. If they receive that introduction at this point, they will then, as Control says, arise from erroneous views and perspectives. In other words, they will be able to transcend the common Madhyamaka non-affirming negation emptiness, to realize the full meaning of emptiness, which is the Buddha nature itself, empty of all extraneous or all incidental phenomena. In short, the Buddha nature is empty of all conditioned things. That is what will be shown to them through the introduction. And when they realize that the nature of the mind is none other than the Buddha nature, and there's never been any other than the Buddha nature, they will realize the view of the extraordinary or uncommon great Madhyamaka. Again, here's another kind of way of signifying Shentong view. Proponents of Shentong call their system Umachempo in Tibetan, great Madhyamaka, as opposed to, for them, what is the ordinary or common Madhyamaka. So when you come across that term, great Madhyamaka, in this context at least, it means Shentong. So that is how one would approach it, coming from that side of having an affinity with the common Madhyamaka. Now Control Lodrotai wants to mention a couple of erroneous ways of practicing this at this point, and ways of therefore going astray, going wrong. So he quotes He says, in the essay on the holy collection of meditative concentration, this is a section in a long Mahayana sutra. I've forgotten just right now which particular Mahayana sutra it is, but it's one of the long Mahayana sutras. There it says, when actual attachment forms, even if one's meditative concentration is stable, it is known as the meditation which pleases children. Nirvana will not be obtained by this. So he's describing a way of meditating which is not leading to liberation. When actual attachment forms, meaning when you cling to, as I put it earlier, an agenda in your meditation, when you cling to a view, even the view of emptiness, if you cling to that, then even if your shamatha is very stable and your mind is not wandering and so on and so forth, this will not open up the door to liberation for you. You're just reinforcing this view, which is a mistaken view. And that, of course, is very dangerous, because a mistaken view, one which, for instance, substantializes emptiness, reinforced by great meditative concentration power, is one you'll find very difficult to break out of. So that is how he calls it a childish meditation, an immature meditation. And he wants to talk a little bit more about this. Venerable Thaye says, some claim that the experience of, in contrast to what we've been saying, he's implying, some claim that the experience of emptiness through conceptual analysis is the true nature of reality, and that all schools other than their great Madhyamaka are in error. This is known as straying in regard to the path. When the Tibetan text, a particular passage begins kachi, which means some say, you always, of course, because texts are very polite, usually don't say who this is. They don't name the person or people they're refuting. But of course, educated people always do know who is being referred to in this courteous way. So, there's some people outside of our system who think that the only way you can experience emptiness as a beginner, like us, is simply through analytical meditation. So they say that to try to let your mind settle without conceptualization, without a focus on emptiness as an object to be discovered, this is mistaken. This is utterly mistaken. So they say that until you reach the level of a noble being, a bodhisattva on the first bhumi, your meditation on emptiness must only be conceptual, must only be analytical, such as like I meditate on the table, and through the method of deconstruction, I take the idea, is there a real table? I analyze the table into its constituent parts until I come to see that actually the table doesn't have the intrinsic nature of being a table. Job done. That's it. That is as far as I can go in realizing emptiness, according to the proponents of this opinion. So what I've got at the end is the concept: the table is empty of being a table. But actually, emotionally speaking, the table is still there for me. It's just, instead of saying the table's wooden, or the table's a particularly fine piece of Indian engineering, I say the table also has the quality of being empty. But the table's left there, really, emotionally speaking, for me, if I only meditate in this way on emptiness through merely intellectual analysis. So this is the position maintained by many followers of Tsongkhapa, that ordinary people can only meditate on emptiness through conceptual analysis, because they say to go beyond that is to fall into nihilism, like the Hashang meditators, Zen meditators in 8th century Tibet. That is their opinion. Others, so the others who differ from our way, others, he said, there are others who assert that they cannot be liberated without their own intellect. They enumerate, they count the arising and cessation of thoughts in a deluded Mahamudra. This is the experience of straying from the basis. So, Contra Lodro Thai here seems to be referring to people who think that the point of meditating Mahamudra is to emphasize the stillness or gap between thoughts. That's what he means by talking about counting the thoughts and the rising and cessation of thoughts. So for them, actually, they build up a duality between thoughts and stillness, between moving thoughts and stillness. So it's as a way of meditating, it leads you into a complete trap, a complete cage. So this is why the way to meditate is the way of non-mental activity, which doesn't count, it doesn't enumerate the arising and cessation of thoughts. So the first, he says, the Gelug, if you like, they stray in regard to the path, because for them the path is only analytical meditation. These people practicing this mistaken Mahamudra, he says, they're deluded in relation to they've strayed from the basis, which is just the natural openness of mind, which doesn't need any division between thoughts and stillness, because both are simply the expression of the mind itself. As he says, of these two groups, in fact, apart from a greater or lesser analysis of labels, so the Gelug make the bigger analysis of labels, they're more conceptual, whereas the people with the false Mahamudra, of course, are trying to emphasize non-labels by emphasizing the gap between thoughts. Apart from that difference between them, both groups are equal in being unable to transcend the three realms. You know, whether you're practicing according to this over-analytical, over-intellectual way, or this way which only emphasizes the gap between thoughts, neither way will lead you to liberation, as he puts here, to transcend the three realms. And he says, to open the door, Contra says, to open the door of the primordial wisdom of omniscience, like rock meeting bone, it's necessary to be certain on this point of view, meditation and action, through understanding, experiencing and realizing emptiness. So opening the door of the primordial wisdom of omniscience is, in a way, simply an epithet here, a way of referring to Buddhahood. Like rock meeting bone means rock meeting bone is a decisive experience. There's nothing soft, it's direct. It's really something that happens. So if you want the real experience, then you need to be certain about this point that we've explained here of the view, meditation, action. Going from the intellectual analysis of the Madhyamaka into the non-meditation, the meditation without mental activity, and then receiving the introduction to the Shentong view. This is the way to understand experience and realize emptiness fully. So that is the first approach to understanding the Shentong view by way of the common Madhyamaka. Now the second way, he calls the way of the Yogacharins. This might cause a little confusion, I think, that he's referring it here to the Yogacharins, because yesterday, when at the beginning of this section on what is to be understood, Controlodra Thaye designated the Yogacharins as having a deficient view, the view that simply, although there's no duality, no subject and object, there is a truly existent mind as their basis. We usually call this view the Chittamatra, or mind-only view, and therefore we call people who follow this Chittamatrins, followers of mind-only. But here, Yogacara, he's using in a slightly different way. It makes it confusing because it's in the same text. But he means those who, as he is going to put it, those who rely on the teaching of Maitreya. The Bodhisattva Maitreya, in his 5 great treatises that he transmitted to Asanga, most importantly, the Jude Lama, his system that comes from Maitreya, can be called Yogacara because it's about practice, the practice of yoga here being a synonym for the practice of meditation. And therefore, quite often in Shentong texts, the Shentong view is also called the Yogacara Madhyamaka, meaning Madhyamaka which uses the Yogacara methods of practice. So Yogacara Madhyamaka then does not mean, for Shentongpas, that they're teaching Chittamatra. It just means that they use some of the same terminology that Chittamatra share with Yogacara. But this is not a Chittamatrian view that's going to be arrived at in this way. Anyway, Controlodra Thaye begins. Those who rely on the teaching of Maitreya should begin by using the texts of the Intermediate Wheel and their commentaries in order to sever the elaborations of incidental, deceptively appearing phenomena. What does he mean? Well, actually, he's talking about what we've really just done. Because he's saying, even if the Buddha nature, the definitive view, the Shentong view, cannot be introduced to you unless you have removed your clinging to conditioned phenomena as being real. Okay, let's give a very good, a kind of good example of this, really, which I think people already probably thought of, which is that it would be possible to confuse this view of Buddha nature with an idea that there's inside of us there's a truly existent self, an Atman, to use the Sanskrit term. It would be possible to do that because the Buddha nature is talked about as your real nature, what is absolutely real, and so on. So, first of all, we have to eliminate any belief in such truly existent selves. We have to get them out of the way, such views, or else hearing the Buddha nature teaching will simply mistakenly assume, it's like I have a true self then, or it's like a soul or something inside of me. So Shentong in a way can only be understood, and we might even say only safely taught, if people already have done the work of clearing away clinging to conditioned phenomena as truly existent. So, what do you use for that? You use the common Madhyamaka, because through the common Madhyamaka you can develop total confidence, total certainty in the idea that all phenomena, such as the five aggregates, from my body to my consciousness, none of them have any truly existent nature, and neither do the five skandhas of other beings, neither do the elements of the world, neither are there any building blocks for the world, such as atoms or moments of consciousness. None of those have any true existence whatsoever. We cling to them as if they're real, and therefore they cover the Buddha nature. But in themselves they are, as he describes them here, incidental, deceptively appearing phenomena. All the things we may think are ourself, or we may cling to as self and an external world, they're deceptive, they're not real, they're fictional, they're the projection of a deluded mind. They've never really been there at all. And therefore, they're like a cloud. A cloud is incidental, a temporary appearance which seems to cover the sky so that we can't see the sky or the sun in the sky. To be able to see the sky or the sun, the clouds need to, as it were, be seen through. But we can see through them because they're not real, they're not substantial. They're just a temporary product of causes and conditions. So we need to see that all phenomena are just like that in order to then be introduced to the Buddha nature effectively. So that's why it says, use the teachings of the intermediate wheel, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the Heart Sutra, for instance, and the commentaries on it, like composed by the great the Madhyamaka masters, Shantideva, Chandakirti, and so on, in order to cut through the elaborations, meaning the intellectual clinging to those things as being real. So that is ideally what you do if you are able to. However, if you don't have time for this, for studying the Rangtong Madhyamaka fully, you can still bring about definitive purification. Purification meaning purifying your clinging to these fictional phenomena, conditioned phenomena, by simply relying on the 5 texts of Maitreya himself. Because in the 5 great texts of Maitreya, the Sutra Lankara, the Abhisamaya Lankara, Dhammadhammata Vibhanga, Madhyanta Vibhaga, and finally Jude Lama, he does all that. He shows you why the conditioned phenomena are just like clouds, just fictions covering the, as it were, the reality of our Buddha nature mind. If you don't have time to receive the teaching and study all 5 dharmas of Maitreya, then he says, even just the Uttara Tantra Shastra, just receive the teaching of the Jude Lama alone. But if even this is not possible, how kind Controlodra Thaye is to the lazy. If even that is not possible, then, as is said, and there's a quote here, passage, and I'll explain it afterwards. Once one has understood that there is, so this is what you should do. Once one has understood that there is nothing other than mind, one realizes that mind itself is non-existent. The intelligent, when they have understood this twofold non-existence remain in the Dharma Dhatu. Okay. This is adopted from the Yogacharin text of Maitreya, this system, this twofold approach. And those of you who've received the teaching on the Lojong, particularly Lojong Dundunma, the 7-point meditation, should recognize that here effectively Contra Lodra Thaye is describing the method of meditating ultimate bodhicitta that is taught in the Lojong. It's the same system of progression from realizing first that there is nothing apart from mind. In the Lojong text it says, realize all phenomena are like dreams. And we do that by understanding that there is nothing external to mind. There's nothing external to mind. That even now, whatever appears for us is simply like images in a dream, nothing other than mental activity. In fact, as Ranjan Dorji explains to us in Namsha Yeshi, if there was truly existent objects, mind couldn't, separate from mind, beyond mind, external to mind could not connect with them, because there'd forever be a gap between mind here and objects over there. So actually, there is nothing other than our mind. No matter how vivid the object is, it's not something external that the mind is, as it were, moving out and taking hold of. It is just arising within the mind stream itself. No different from a dream. The only difference between the images that arise for us now and the images at night are that the imprints that govern, that from which these appearances come, are stronger for daytime experiences and generally weaker for nighttime experiences. But both the experiences of the night, the dreams, and the day, external objects, are just the activity of mind, which will be explained to us in a minute. So second line in the verse says, having done that, one then realizes that mind itself is non-existent. Again, remembering the Lojong Dundunma, it says now, see the nature of unborn awareness, meaning once you've realized all phenomena are dreams because they're not beyond the mind, then you look into the mind itself to see, does it have the characteristics of something truly existent? So it's like you're dismantling your clinging to duality, the duality of there being true objects and true subject, perceiving them step by step. First the objects are dissolved, then the subject mind, which you cling to as real, is also dissolved. Because you cannot find a mind with any characteristics of substantiality when you analyze it, as you're taught in the Lojong teachings themselves. So as he says, when the intelligent have understood this twofold non-duality, this twofold non-existence, they remain in the Dharma Dhatu, meaning they have nothing more to do. Their mind settles in the true nature of reality. Here, Dharma Dhatu is a synonym for the Buddha nature itself. As in the Lojong verse, it says, at this point, rest in the Alaya, the basis. And from a Shentong point of view, that term Alaya there refers to the Buddha nature, not the Alaya Vijnana, the base consciousness, but the Alaya itself is Buddha nature. So, Control unpacks this verse for us, so we'll know how to proceed. In other words, a variety of appearances arises in dependence upon the temporary unawareness aspect of one's own mind, which has been stained since beginningless time. In other words, if one asks, where do the variety of appearances which I experience now, where do they come from? Surely they come from external objects, because they're appearing for me. And that's not actually the case. Because, as we've said, the mind can never experience anything outside of itself. So everything that appears to me is the ripening of imprints carried along in the base consciousness, the Alaya Vijnana, that deepest part of the stream of mind, of samsaric mind, in which the impressions of all experiences, thoughts, and actions are carried to ripen at the appropriate time when the conditions, the necessary conditions, are gathered. And then, when it ripens, it gives rise to appearances which manifest through our 6 senses. But that's all. So, the arising of consciousness with its appearances is like a current forcing itself to the top in a stream and creating a wave, a temporary wave. The sense consciousness and its appearance is like the temporary wave manifesting through the power of the current coming to the surface. The power of the current is the imprint that is ripening at that time in my mind, forcing this to arise at the surface. And then I mistakenly interpret that appearance, which is arising from the imprint, as being something out there which my mind is which is experiencing. But it's no more valid than me thinking that the ripening of an imprint, a memory at night, causing dream appearances to arise, make it, if I think that's a real thing, the dream image, the beautiful maiden, the horrific monster, the politician, I'll stop dealing with unpleasant things now, all those are just the arising of imprints from the mind, whether in dreams or in everyday life. The temporary unawareness aspect of one's mind. Because this base consciousness, which is grasped mistakenly as self, and therefore is like the unawareness aspect of mind, actually it's truly non-existent when one analyzes. But right now, it's appearing and it's staining my experience. It has been polluted by the imprints of karma since beginningless time. It moves from moment to moment, from day to day, from life to life, carrying the karma, the impressions of experiences and actions. But that's all appearances are, just a manifestation of that. As he says, when appearances are unexamined and unanalyzed, they're like delusions in a dream. Meaning, right now we don't ever ask ourselves, are these appearances, are they real? Are they really out there? Is it not that they're just the ripening of imprints in my mind? Rather, like when I go to sleep at night, I take the drama of my dreams seriously, and therefore I react with pleasure or fear or whatever. But when I awaken, I realize that pleasure or that fear had no real basis to it. This is just the play of my mind, the ripening of imprints in my mind. There's nothing to be happy about, nothing to be fearful about. So when appearances are examined, Yogacharin says, they're found not to be accomplished, as each is empty of essence. Thus, all appearances are the emanation of mind alone. So, up to this point, we are in agreement with the Chittamatra assertion that all phenomena are merely mind. Even though these apparent objects arise as if they were external, they're without intrinsic nature, like, for instance, the moon appearing in water. So the moon appearing in water, it's clear, it's beautiful, it's brilliant. I might be persuaded to even go in the water and pull it out, it's so beautiful. But if I did that, I'd be bitterly disappointed, because it would have disappearing by very act of grasping. Because that appearance is without any intrinsic nature. It's arising in dependence upon causes and conditions. The satellite of the earth, a pool of water, cloudless sky, and being a perceiver there. All those things coming together produce this vivid, clear appearance. But that it is vivid and clear doesn't give it any status of reality, of solidity whatsoever. It lacks that entirely. So similarly, all appearances arising as they do through the ripening imprints in my mind, however vivid and clear they were, however much they make me think they're external, they're just like that. They're without intrinsic nature. And are in reality, therefore, conventional truth, as we discussed yesterday. They appear, but when they appear to the non-analytical mind. The non-analytical mind doesn't analyze them and takes it for granted. They exist, they're real. But when we analyze, we do not find them. We find emptiness. Furthermore, the subject mind, so now we've done one step, now two step. The subject mind does not dwell either outside or inside and has no shape or color. So now we turn to the mind, as if we see that everything is projected from the mind, but is the projector, the mind itself, real? And again, this is exactly following the steps in the Lojong Ultimate Bodhicitta meditation. If it was real, it would have characteristics by which we could grasp it and say, here it is, it's like this. It is this shape and not some other shape. It is this color and not some other color. It arises here. Here it endures. There it ceases. So in different ways, it would have something we could grasp and take hold of, and therefore we could say, I've got it. I've got it. It is this shape, this color. Its beginning is here, its duration here, its end is here. But when we look into mind looking into itself, so to speak, we cannot find it in any of these categories. Thus, it is not accomplished as an entity. If it was an entity, it would have a shape. It would have a color. It would have an existence in time. There would be a point where you could say, here it began. Here it endures. Here it ceases. But you can't grasp mind through these frameworks, through these categories. It's impossible to do so. So, therefore, as he says, the 8 separable consciousnesses arise in this way from the continuity of deluded self-clinging and are primordially empty like sky flowers. What does he mean? Well, if we were to categorize mind in a little more detail, as is done in the Abhidharma of the Chittamatrins, we could say there's 8 types of consciousness arising and passing away from moment to moment. The base consciousness, the Alaya, Vijnana, the Manas, the ego consciousness, and the 6 sense consciousnesses. But actually, none of these can be found. When we look into mind, as we've just seen, we cannot grasp anything and say, I've got it. Here it is. This is its substance. This is its reality. So, that idea of my mind, or my mind with its 8 aspects, its 8 consciousnesses, it's a delusion. It arises, why do I believe in it now? Why do I cling to my mind now and say, this is myself, I'm this? Reason why? Because I did in the previous moment. You know, as ignorance transmits from moment to moment. Until we look into the object of our ignorance, we will continue to believe in it. This is the meaning of dependent origination. This existing, that arises. If one asks, why am I stupid? now in this moment? The answer is because I continue to behave and view things stupidly in the previous moment. And that stupidity came from the previous moment. There's nothing to it, it's just a habit, but it transmits in this way. This existing, that arises. How long have I been stupid? Actually, since beginningless time. That's it. I didn't suddenly I wasn't intelligent and then became stupid. I've always been stupid. That's why Ranjan Dorji in Nimpo Tempa says, as regard to samsara, it is beginningless. Buddha said, you cannot trace any beginning to the sequence of cause and effect. But nevertheless, no matter how long I've been stupid, in this case, from beginningless time, there's nothing to it. The self I'm clinging to, the mind I'm clinging to, as my mind, is as empty as a sky flower. Sky flower. There can't be a sky flower. A flower needs a seed, soil, water. There's none of those in the sky. That's why flowers don't spontaneously arise in the sky. So a sky flower is an analogy for something that never existed at all. My mind, as subject, perceiver, never existed, any more than the appearances as objects ever exist. So neither external nor inner, neither objects nor subject. Now we're ready for Maitreya's teaching at this point. But you're probably also ready for lunch. So we're going to break, but we've kind of, as I say, we are tracking now the ultimate bodhicitta meditation from the Lojong, and now we'll go a little further, but this method of meditating on the appearances and then the mind is exactly the same as Controller Thai teaches in his commentary on the 7 points of mind training. So in fact, there's a very nice fit between his presentation of the Shentong view in this text and his way of teaching the Lojong Dondimma. So I guess we should say that there's still a few minutes. If you want to ask if there's any question, we could perhaps discuss them.
Hello. Thank you for your explanation. It was much clearer for me than yesterday. Thank you. I have a question regarding the aspect of non-meditation.
Yes.
And you said in the non-meditation that it's really without mental activity.
Yes.
How does this aspect of practice, one could say, go together with the very forms of meditation where you visualize a lot and you actually have a lot of mental activity and a lot of kind of goals that you set yourself to achieve? I still find it difficult to do both. I'm drawn very much to this element of non-meditation, but then my motivation for the visualization meditations, which have a lot of activity, kind of fade.
Yes. It's a very good question. I mean, that question could crop up even outside of this Shentong teaching. So I say this. Because Mahamudra itself, the way Mahamudra is presented, it's usually presented, there's an emphasis on this non-mental activity. It comes from Maitrapa. He talks about it a lot in his teaching. So everything's in context. As beginners, just solely trying to relate to practice, non-practice, they do what Shabaripa says in one doha, the supreme meditation is no meditation. Well, that won't get us very far. That will remain completely stupid, but with a possible extra problem that we think we're enlightened for a few days. So beginners like ourselves, we need framework, we need structure, we need the graduated path approach. For instance, we need the Nundro. That's why the Nundro is such a wonderful way into Mahamudra, because it works on things, purifies, accumulates merit, and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, even as a beginner, we must understand that all those efforts, purifying, accumulating merit, developing devotion, don't produce Mahamudra. The Mahamudra cannot be produced. It is, as Milarepa says, wise Buddhas cannot improve it, foolish beings cannot damage it, because it's the actual primordial nature of our mind. So even as a beginner, for instance, even in the Nundro, take that as a paradigm case, there's a certain point at the end of the practice when you've done that particular part of the Nundro, where you let go. It may be, for instance, in the Guru Yoga, where having received this stream of initiations, Lama Vajradhara dissolves into you, you give up at that time. Even if it's only that you rest for a few minutes before finishing the session with another formal practice, the dedication, you've stepped, as it were, into that space of non-doing, of no longer focusing, of not having an aim, of not trying to even calm your mind down, not trying even to develop any special insights. The same with Chenrezig, like we're doing every afternoon. Even for us beginners, there's an opportunity to have some kind of sense of this space of non-mental activity in that gap after the mantra practice finishes and before the dedication of merit. In the actual notes to the text, Tantra Japa says, here, meditate beyond the three circles, meaning the idea of meditator, meditation object, and meditation practice. It's, again, the same instruction. Non-meditation. Meditate without mental activity. So even we beginners, though we're not ready for full immersion in this, because our minds are just not strong or subtle enough for it yet, we still can contact it, even as relative beginners, where the balance of our practice is more weighted towards formal practice. Still it's there as an element, it should be, because otherwise we'll become addicted to the methods. We'll be thinking, if I do this practice, these prostrations, these offerings, these mantras, these visualizations, I will create Mahamudra. And that way you'll never realize Mahamudra, you just pile up more and more things, more and more objects. Now, however, by persisting gently in this way, this kind of combined way, the doing and the non-doing, gradually some of that spirit of the non-doing will start to feed back into your doing practice, into the way you do the prostrations, into the way you do the Vajrasattva, into the way you do the Chenrezig development stage. You'll start to sense, yes, I'm saying these words, and the Chenrezig is white, 4 arms, and so on and so forth, but my mind is still got that spaciousness that it previously has only had in the non-doing part of the practice. So even though there's detail and visualization, there's a sense of underlying emptiness there. So the two start to marry together. That's how an experienced practitioner starts to get it. He doesn't, continue to divide things. There's the formal part of the practice and the formless part of the practice. They start to fuse together, as they must, because in fact the nature of our mind is the union of clarity and emptiness, the union of awareness and emptiness. So practice parallels that. But as beginners, we need more emphasis on the form. But it's good even as beginners to hear about the non-meditation, the meditation about mental activity, because it at least frees us from that, as it were, spiritual materialism of thinking, I can produce it by the right technique, and you can't. So that's it, really.
Thank you.
Thank you for this presentation. On page 6, Lama Thaye is not refuting, but saying that it is not like the Gelugpa says, and also like the others. And so the others, they say, like the ones who are like following the gaps between thoughts.
Yes.
Is that a specific assertion, or is that an individual way of erring in meditation?
I think that he must be referring to some meditators he knew, or that this can be it's a common deviation for Kaju Mahamudra meditators. The first is very clearly the Gelug, because not only Contra Lama Thaye, but other great masters such as Mipam Rinpoche and Gorampa Sonam Sengi have all pointed out this is characteristic of the Gelugpa way of meditating on emptiness. But this second one, I at least cannot think of any particular group who asserted this as their technique. So I think he must be referring to people just getting too hung up on the gap between thoughts in meditation.
If I remember correctly, in last session, it was stated that the Buddha nature is not the mind. Was that correctly?
It's not the mind as understood as the fifth skandha, consciousness, in any of its eight aspects. But the Buddha nature is unconditioned mind. The mind has never been produced as any type of entity. So it is awareness, of course, it is aware, it's not unconscious, but it's not a mind in the samsaric or conditioned sense. But this will become very clear as we go further. But it's almost like this. That's why it's important to have refuted it, gone through the Chittamatra assertion and dismantled it from a Madhyamaka point of view, so that when the word mind is used later, as in your mind is the Buddha nature, you can use that in a decontaminated, a detoxified way. But people who are opposed to this Shentong, as I mentioned yesterday, do assert that Shentong is no more than a glorified Chittamatra. I mean, there are some people who say worse things about Shentong. I'll just ask myself. Okay, I just said what we say. Well, I think lunch is exercising its powerful magical fascination. So why don't we dedicate the merit? And then we did more today than, how much did you do exactly? There's still a lot to do. Sunnam di tanshi zikpa ne tobe ne pe dranam pamchi ne chiga na chi bala Sipi sole drowa drowa sho. Actually, there was one, in Sakya, there was one great master, Shakya Chogden, who Jamgon Kongtrul mentioned, who was a very strong Shendomba. He lived in the 15th century. At that time, the other great Sakya philosopher of the time was called Gorampa Sonam Sengi. And Gorampa himself did not accept the Shentong. So there's a very big debate between these two masters. And generally, later on in the Sakya school, Gorampa's view was followed. But Gorampa's understanding of Shentong is not so negative as you find among many Gelugpas. The many Gelugpas have much more negative attitudes to Shentong. So that's more or less how it is in Sakya. Okay, so till tomorrow.